All right, everyone. I have a feeling that the Kamala Harris campaign is going to regret and get buyer's remorse for having chosen Tim Walz because he's, link in the description, archived of course, currently getting dragged by the battalion commander who actually came after him. And that's not really a good look. You see, the opposite running mate, J.D. Vance, is a veteran. Nobody appears to have had any problems with his particular, veteran-ness, his time in the military. But Tim Walz is basically, he's getting dragged to Stolenvalor at this point. People keep sending me news tips, and some of them are quite dense, so I can't get through all of the info. Apparently the horse seaman story about Tim Walz is false, by the way. Apparently that is actually a meme. It might have been a different Tim Walz, or it might be fabricated entirely. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like he didn't actually get his stomach pumped, and it's like a Rod Stewart story. The story was that Rod Stewart, back in the 80s, he sucked a bunch of cocks, and he overdosed on cocaine as a result of having like a wild gay orgy, and this turned out to be false as well, so we'll get past that. Tim Walz is a weirdo. Here's my problem. When we focus too much on Tim Walz's military career, so the fact that he effectively abandoned his troops that he was going to lead in Iraq, we sort of get lost in the weeds, so to speak. Focus more, I think, strategically speaking, focus more on the weird shit that he said and the weird policy proposals that he has. He's called socialism neighborliness. This, if more Americans knew about the fact that the person who's a heartbeat away from the presidency was effectively an avowed socialist, I think that the ticket would crash and burn. The problem is that everyone's too busy talking about horse semen, or sometimes cattle semen or something like that, bull semen, rather. And things like that. I mean, Tim Walz is just a weird dude. He's also entirely forgettable. The other thing is that this dude is boring as fuck. J.D. Vance is getting cast off by the legacy media and the tech powers that be as weird. Here's what I would do if I were leading the Trump campaign, if I were their advisor. I'd say lean into it. Yeah, say weird is good. The system's clearly not goddamn working. So being weird, there's nothing wrong with that. We gotta change things, hope and change, right? Change we can believe in. There was a time when you liberals embraced the concept. You realized the system wasn't working. The people that you were seeking to supplant happen to be funding our opponents at the moment, actually. George W. is involved again with the super PAC that's running the demoralization campaign online. Tim Walz, though, he's the legit weird dude. And I was thinking to myself, like, who would I rather have a beer with? Okay. Tim Walz. All right, so he didn't drink horse semen, so we've established that. But he's Stolenvalor mode. He says he's a socialist, effectively. At least, he insinuates that he's a socialist. Or socialist friendly. He's socialist adjacent. Stuff like that. Or J.D. Vance. Can he be a little bit awkward sometimes in his speaking style? Yeah, admittedly. That's basically every politician. When you look at who Trump's opponent is, who's more awkward? Kamala Harris and/or Tim Walz, or J.D. Vance? That would be Kamala. She's more awkward than Joe Biden. Joe Biden's straight out demented, and he makes more sense than her, even on a bad day. It is definitely problematic, but my analysis of it is this. While it should be talked about, the fact that Tim Walz effectively abandoned the people that he had sworn brotherhood to, this will matter mainly to people who are veterans or in the military or who are like hyper-patriotic. Well, they're already voting Trump. They're not going to vote for fucking Kamala Harris. Trump has those votes sewn up, mostly. He's probably get 80% of the veteran vote. So it's not so meaningful. What people need to focus on really more is his socialism comments and things like that. Don't get dragged off into La La Land and start rambling single-mindedly about his stolen valor. because it's not going to matter to the average left-leaning voter. Are they gung-ho for the military? No. They don't give a fuck about the military. Hell, Kamala tear the military apart and they'll applaud like seals. They're doing that for Biden, aren't they? Wokeifying the military, putting in a bunch of generals and shit like that in the upper brass simply because of the color of their skin, or instead of the content of their character, or because of the genitals that they have. You think that these people seriously care about the function of the U.S. military? Now, I have my own beliefs with regards to militarism. I believe the military should have more resources than it currently has. But I believe it should be kept stateside as much as possible. If you're in a fully allied country and they give your blessing to have a base there or something, cross-training with the British or something like that, that's perfectly fine. Otherwise, if we're unwelcome in any way, I believe in saying, okay, bye, and bringing them back stateside. Then we can divert more money to making more ships, because we have to guard the entire world's shipping lanes. Or we can develop better MREs than menu number 3 with the chicken chunks, because otherwise you're going to give your fucking troops food poisoning. I can't even imagine if you're handed one of them, you just fucking toss it out the porthole or something like that. Must be goddamn terrible. Why is it still on the menu list, by the way? I don't know. I'm interested in military affairs to an extent. And again, as Commander-in-Chief, I would beef up the goddamn military, pump it full of steroids, and then preferably not use it at all. Because war is hell, and anytime that you have to bless the vaporized remains of a soldier who got the Medal of Honor posthumously, it's probably not a good day. For your presidency, for their family, and for the nation in general. This is probably what we get under Donald Trump, by the way. You get a beefy military, fully functioning, but it's used sparingly. Under the Biden administration, and ergo probably the Kamala administration, you get a bunch of proxy wars and shit like that. And with Tim Walz in there, you think that he gives a fuck about the soldiers? You think he gives a fuck about some corporal in the U.S. Army? Some sergeant in the Marine Corps? You think he gives a fuck about them? He doesn't give a fuck about anyone but himself. He probably fucks Kamala at this point because her husband looks like a total cuck, so she's got to get her dick somewhere. So he's like, imagine, she had a dick measuring contest for choosing her running mate. She's like, well, Buttigieg is disqualified because he's gay, so he's probably not going to be able to keep it up. All right, let me see your cocks. All right, Josh, pull down those drawers. Yeah, that's all right. Hey, Tim. Oh, that's, you got an extra inch on him. A little more girth or something like that. You pop a little blue pill and everything's hunky-dory. This is probably the way the Kamala administration would work if it's in the White House, which should fucking terrify you, by the way. Now, the Stolenvalor story is being talked about too much. His position on actual meaningful issues, taxes, foreign diplomacy, regulations, guns, things like that, that is the red meat. Most people aren't going to care about the Stolenvalor story, and they've already heard it. So everyone's already basically made up their minds with regards to this. Do you think that Tim Walz was justified? Do you think he was unjustified? Did he do anything particularly wrong? Was it terribly wrong? What degree was it wrong? Or was he perfectly, it's perfectly fine and nobody cares? Everyone's already made up their minds about it, but everyone keeps talking about it. I think that there are more meaningful discussions to be had with regards to Mr. Walz. That's about all. Peace out.